less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Free Georgia podcast. My name is Jake Green, and today I'm joined by Tammy Hughley. Tammy, how you doing?
Hello, Jake. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Can you just give a little introduction to yourself and like what you do and why you're here?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am a certified firearms instructor, certified by the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. I am certified in active shooter response training by the USCCA and the DHS. And that was a result of something that actually happened to me a few years ago. In 2017, I had a home invasion. It was a very bizarre story. I won't get into all of the minute details, but it was something that I went through that I wouldn't wish on anybody. As I was getting up at 7:00, it was a Sunday morning in February of 2017, and I was just getting out of bed and got into my living room, and I had like a split bedroom plan, and I lived alone. I got into my bedroom and I heard I got into my living room and I heard glass breaking, and it was really loud. I lived in an apartment, so, your brain does a lot of crazy things when something like that is going on. And it seems like I had a million explanations for the breaking glass in a matter of like 5 seconds. But my brain would dismiss each one of them, and I kind of knew what it was, but it's like that fight or flight, that whole process, wouldn't allow me to believe something was going on. A few seconds later, I heard it again, and I kind of froze. And as I heard my spare bedroom door, which is where I heard the glass coming from, as I heard that door open from the inside, I knew. I mean, it all kind of came together, and I went into action. I had about a 20-year-old Taurus 9mm pistol that a friend had given me, and I didn't even want it at the time. I had never shot a gun, had never owned a gun, and I was terrified of it. Terrified. Thank God I had it, because I went to my bedside table, grabbed that gun, and I ran back around to the other side of my bed and took cover behind a tall chest of drawers. And let me throw in here at this point too, not that it's relevant to the story, but it does add a lot to the stress factor of what happened. As I said, I was just getting up. I was going to get in the shower, and so I had already undressed. Okay, so yeah, this whole thing happened with me totally undressed. So I could see out from the side of the chest of drawers through my living room, so I could see him coming. And I stepped out, and I had the gun pointed at him, and he saw it. He saw me, and it didn't slow him down. He just continued to advance. He got to the threshold of my bedroom door, and I screamed, "Stop," and, get out of here, stop. And he just looked me dead in the eye and just shook his head and said no. And that was the only word that he spoke the whole time. And all I could do was just try to think of, who is this? I mean, who is this guy? Is this somebody that I know? I mean, what, I couldn't make sense of anything. So, like I said, he never said a word. And it was just so bizarre because I couldn't figure out what he wanted, And I thought, well, I mean, is he here to rape me? Is he here to kill me? What is he here for? And he continued to advance on me into my bedroom, and I continued to back up. And at that point, I was pretty much out of anywhere to go. So I pulled up the gun and I pulled the trigger. And when I did, nothing happened. It just kind of, no boom, no bang, nothing. And I remembered at that point that it had a safety on it. And I reached down, of course, I'm shaking all over, and, I finally get the safety off. And when I do, he's taken another step. I lean up, I kind of swing up with the firearm and I fire one shot. And it's not like you see in the movies. It's not, they don't, sling back against the wall or, any of that kind of stuff. And I wasn't even 100% sure I had hit him, but I knew that I had, because he grabbed his chest and he kind of went down, on his knees, and he fell where it was like he was trying to leave. He kind of turned around and he fell in my living room where his feet were right at my bedroom door. So basically I was trapped in my bedroom. He was alive and he was still moving. He still never said anything. He just kind of made a groaning sound. And I picked up my phone and dialed 911. And it was a long conversation. She basically stayed on the phone with me until the police got inside. This is where the really bizarre part begins. When the police arrived, they took me out of the house. They said, "Your home is now a crime scene." And those are words you never forget. I don't care who you are.
No.
And I went outside, and it was like all of my neighbors. I didn't even know that our local police department had that many police officers on staff. They were everywhere. There was every kind of law enforcement vehicle, and it was just all a blur. And I was just, it was absolutely surreal. At one point, they were taking photos, and they told me that it would pretty much be an all-day investigation. And they took me to the police department and took my official statement. I had 5 or 6 officers come up during the time that I was standing out in front of my apartment that would come up and ask me, "Can you tell me just a little bit about what happened?" And there were 5 or 6 of them. And I'm like, "I've already told them this." And, later I realized, I guess they're trying to see if I've changed my story. So they took me downtown. I gave an official statement, and eventually it was ruled as a justifiable homicide. When the autopsy returned, the guy had 0.38 alcohol. The bizarre part is this. He was in a rage and had been up all weekend, I believe. He was looking for his wife, who had gone to pick up her child that she had with her ex-husband. Her ex-husband lived in my apartment complex, but he lived in the building behind me. So this guy actually had the wrong apartment the whole time. And it was just, I was, I mean, needless to say, I was just, I was just like a puddle of tears. It was the most upsetting and horrendous and traumatic thing that I've ever been through. And I kept asking, several people in the parking lot, several of the law enforcement, please tell me that he didn't die. Please tell me that he didn't die. And I had a guy walk up to me and he had on a khaki shirt, and I kind of looked at him and I was asking him that, and he kind of looked down at his feet, and I looked at the logo on his shirt and it said homicide detective, homicide division. And I said, yeah, I just fell on my knees and cried. And after 5 months of therapy, I sat in my living room, terrified. One thing I want to point out to people is, if you don't know this already, if you are a gun owner, you want to be armed in order to defend yourself, I highly recommend you have at least 2 firearms in your home. And the reason for that is when you have to defend yourself with deadly force, they will take your firearm. It's part of the investigation. I don't really know in Georgia, to be honest with you, if they take any other firearms you have. I'm not really sure, but I know for sure that they take that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So after after the autopsy came back and the case was closed, one of the things that really helped me too, Jake, is there was my neighbor upstairs kind of heard all of the commotion going on outside. The guy apparently had tried to kick my door in and was not able to. I don't really want to say, what his affiliation was, but I will say this. He was a big guy. He was exceptionally fit, and he was highly, highly trained. So,
Doesn't make it any less scary.
Yeah, it's just, it was a scary situation, but my neighbor tried to stop him from going in. He couldn't kick the door in because my dad had taught me a long time ago, extra tip, put the back of a chair up under your doorknob and nobody can get in it. And he's correct. It does work. So that's when he decided to come into my window. But it was ruled a justifiable homicide. I went to therapy and was really anxious. I mean, I still have a tremendous amount of anxiety about it. One of the worst things you fear is that it's going to happen again. But I got tired of being a victim. I said, this is enough. So I went and bought a firearm. I started looking at every YouTube that was made about firearms, how to shoot them, my particular type of firearm, everything about it, how to break it down, how to clean it, how to practice malfunctions.
Nice. There are tons of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I joined this organization. I asked the guys at the gun shop, I said, have you ever heard of an organization, and it was the Well Armed Woman at the time, and it's actually Armed Women of America now. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention them, but
I think you're allowed to mention whoever.
Okay. So I got, that is through them, I became a co-leader for the chapter, and I went to get certified as an instructor because I am a Christian, and although the gun is what stopped, just the way the whole thing worked out, I truly believe that, God saved me that day.
Mm.
And I feel like if there's anything that I can do to help other women, I think that's definitely the thing that, that I want to do. And I've done some training. I do one-on-one training.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to kind of do a private thing with, maybe come to your home. Of course, we don't shoot there. We go.
Oh, no. Looks like we lost Tammy. Tammy, can you hear me? Sorry, folks. Having some technical difficulties. She was talking about her power going out. I think her power may have gone out. Yeah, she said a storm was coming through. So let's see if she'll email here in a second or text. All right, folks, we're back. Tammy is apparently in a storm right now, and power might go out at any moment. So, Tammy, you were talking about how you now train people with firearms.
Right. I prefer to do I don't have like a brick and mortar store. That's just not something that's available to me right now at this time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of prefer a more of a personal type thing. A lot of people are not comfortable going into a group of people that they don't really know and learning about firearms and, training at the range and things like that.
Yeah,
So
that's intimidating.
sure it is.
Yeah.
And I like to do it more on a personal basis. For instance, I trained a lady and her two sons, an awesome lady. She was just a spitfire, loved her. And I trained them at their home. And of course, we all met at the range, and that's where she did her actual shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had, like mother-daughter teams. A lot of times the dads don't want to train the wives or the daughters because, and I've had several of them tell me, I think they'll listen to you better than they will to me. And because they think I don't know anything. And it's kind of true, but it's not so much that. I think it's more of just a comfort thing. And I guess knowing that, another female is
Mm-hmm.
going to understand. I mean, there's so many different dynamics physically to a female training, than a male.
Yeah.
Just the handling the recoil and the stain. I mean, everything is different. So,
Can you go into a little bit of like exactly what's different? Just some like examples of things you've seen and things you teach.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things that is really different for a female is we're made differently. We don't like loud noises. You guys, I mean, y'all are like, all about it, fireworks, guns, whatever, explosives. You're all good with it. Females are not that way. We don't like loud noises. They scare us. And, I'm not trying to make women sound weak. I'm just, kind of using a generalization, but you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not as comfortable. I would say 95% of the women that I have trained started out terrified of the recoil of a firearm, terrified of it. And it's definitely something to respect. But what it's real difficult for a man to teach a female, especially a husband and wife type situation, Professional trainers, are different, but it's difficult for them to show them exactly how to stand, what their stance should be, because the way that you control the recoil is that you allow your body to just absorb it. You don't try to fight it, because then that does a lot of different things. The way that you hold, the way that you grip your firearm is extremely important. Anybody who has an automatic pistol where the slide comes back when you fire it to load the next round, anybody who's crossed their thumbs over each other behind that will yeah, that's not a fun thing. We call it a snake bite. And yeah, you only do it once. So there are just a lot of little nuances, a lot of little things like that. You've got to lean into it, and you've got to just absorb all of the recoil instead of standing. A lot of people, especially women, they'll kind of lean backwards when they shoot the first few times. And all that does is it stops the recoil right there in your arms and your hands. So your body's not absorbing it. You're not in a stance to be able to handle it and work with it. So those things are extremely important. Just a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also find it interesting, like, before your incident, you'd never handled a gun, you didn't own a gun, you didn't even want the one that you had.
Right.
But now you're on this path. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, what made you want to go down this path and start training people how to properly use firearms?
I'll tell you, I'll answer that question for you, Jake, by sharing with you the situation about a lady that I trained. She was an elderly lady, and she lives in a very violent part of town. Her husband was military, and he retired, and he has since passed away. She doesn't have the means to be able to move from there. She has no children, no family here. She said, I'm stuck and I'm terrified. She said, I can't sleep at night. I hear gunshots all the time. And so I said, you can do this. And it took us a little while, a couple of sessions, to get her to where she could actually pick the firearm up off of the bench at the range and get it in her hand, get her grip on it, and fire it. And after we did probably 3 or 4 sessions, she looked at me one night and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, you know what? She said, I really think I could defend myself now if I had to. And she said, I feel like a different person. And that's the reason that I do what I do. I believe in it strongly. I believe that everybody should have the right to defend themselves. And I believe if they're going to do that, they need to be trained. And I just want women to know, and men too. I don't mean to keep singling out women. I'm not leaving you guys out for any reason. I'm just talking about, women, simply because it's easier. I have actually done, instructed a couple of men.
But your specialty is women, right?
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just more comfortable,
Yeah. You teach what you know.
Right. That's right.
Being
That's
a woman,
right.
it's probably easier for you to teach it.
Right. That's exactly right.
I imagine, like, that the example you just gave, that kind of training, and like from the beginning, her not even wanting to pick up the firearm, I'm like the patience involved in that, and just like what are some of the tactics you use to get people comfortable with picking up the gun for the first time?
Well, the big part of that, before they ever handle a firearm, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I want them to know. Mainly the safety part of it. I want them to understand that a firearm is something that you don't have to be afraid of, but you definitely have to respect. The 4 universal safety laws, everybody that carries a firearm should know those. The universal safety rules, always assume every firearm's loaded, never pointed at anything you're not willing to destroy, and that includes yourself. Those rules. And then there's a lot of things that, they need to know about what kind of firearm works best for them. If you've got a woman that has little petite hands, you're not going to be able to put a Glock 19, double stack in her hand. It's not going to work. I personally am not a big fan of 22s for anybody, but it's better than nothing.
Sometimes it's necessary.
Exactly. And I prefer at least a 380. I mean, it's going to give you a little more stopping power. But yeah, those, and we, and we talk, and I try to get to know them, and I try to figure out what exactly is it that, how can I encourage them so that they can be able to have that vision to see, right now you're over here and you're afraid, but you can beat that fear with knowledge and practice. And, I just try to figure out what it is that's driving them, what it is that they're, where their fears lie, and then address those, get those out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, so many things are scary before you do them for the first time. Like, I mean, before the show, we were just talking about remodeling a bathroom. We'd never done that, and it was terrifying. Not quite the same thing as picking up a gun, but
not quite, but it's yeah, it's not pretty.
yeah. Getting over that initial fear is a huge roadblock for a lot of people with tons of things in life. Like, it keeps people stuck in one spot for a long time.
That's exactly right. And, one of the things that I've always really believed in, Jake, is you can live your life as a victim, and you can be afraid of all of the things going on around this world today. Crime, I mean, car break-ins, home invasions. You can be afraid of all of that and be a victim, but you give up your power. And in order to get your power back, you have to do something. You have to take action. You have to find that thing inside of you that just says, look, you can do this. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to live this way. You don't have to live in fear. Yeah, there's always going to be anxiety and all of that kind of normal stuff, but I'm talking about an overwhelming fear. You give away your power when you live your life as a victim.
Yeah, it's pretty admirable that you could have taken that victimhood mentality after your incident, but you turned it around and turned it into something empowering.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I do believe a lot of that, comes from God. I truly believe that with all of my heart. This, do you have another question for me? I wanted to mention the constitutional carry thing.
Please do.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I followed that every time they would take a vote. And then I'm like, okay, is Kemp going to sign it? And, there's, House Bill 218 and the 318 and all that, and it got signed, and I'm thrilled that it did. I'm thrilled that it did. And if I see another commercial on television talking about with the retired sheriff's deputy saying, it's a shame and it makes it more dangerous, it does not.
We may have lost her again. No.
Mine didn't go out. I think there was yours, but yeah.
Okay. Well, you cut out with, you were saying,
about the constitutional carry.
Yeah, you were saying it does not make us less safe.
No, it doesn't. And perfect example. Stand up and applaud this guy. The guy in the mall in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
He saved lives. I mean, that was a young man, and his state had just enacted the constitutional carry. A lot of people had a little bit of an issue with him taking a firearm into a mall because there was a sign that said no weapons allowed. Well, the active shooter didn't have a problem with that. So thank goodness the good guy with a gun didn't have a problem with taking it in there too, because he saved lives. And the only thing that I will really say to people, the only thing that worries me just a little bit about constitutional carry, and it is the training. It is so important. If you are going to carry a firearm on your body when you go out of your home, it is a huge responsibility, and you can't take that lightly. You cannot take that lightly. There are, the laws require you to be in grave and immediate threat of death or bodily harm, like grave bodily harm. You got to be an innocent party. And, that guy met all of the rules that you have to follow. When you take training, you learn all of these things. Training is not just about going to a range and shooting at a target. There's so much more that you need to know about it. You need to know. Do you know the day that I shot the firearm, I never even heard it? I never even heard it. And that's because of a thing that you learn in training that your body does. You get tunnel vision. You can't hear anything. Your brain goes all over the place. So there's so much about firearms that you need to know if you're going to carry one. You need to know how to draw your firearm out of your holster without shooting yourself in your foot.
Yes.
You'd be amazed how many people sweep their own feet when they're drawing a firearm out of their holster. It's not something to take lightly. But I do encourage people to, have a firearm in your home, because you never think it's going to happen until it happens. I would have never dreamed it. I never had any fear of anything, and I would have never dreamed that would have happened to me, but it did.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, having more than one firearm is definitely preferable, especially if an incident like this does occur. But as far as we were just talking about constitutional carry, there's some interesting developments that came out in Georgia today with, have you heard of Music Midtown?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. They canceled Music Midtown because of the constitutional carry laws here in Georgia. So they're using it as political leverage to try to get Abrams elected.
Yeah, they're trying to dig in their heels and get what they can. Wow.
Yep. It was similar to the All-Star game stuff. Last year.
I just don't understand what kind of a mindset thinks that by getting rid of guns, quote unquote,
right,
you're going to stop crime and that you're going to stop shootings. You don't, it's criminals are going to do what they're going to do.
Yep.
Why, it makes zero sense. And besides all of that, it's our constitutional right,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, I think like as sad as these two of the last few shootings have been, I think they're pretty good examples of why gun control doesn't work at all. Because
absolutely.
like in that mall, they weren't allowed to have guns. The criminal doesn't care. He brought
Well,
it in to kill a bunch of people. And
do you know the security guards in a lot of malls don't even carry firearms? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
That's a true statement. Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. And, you got a non-criminal who's people are trying to make him out to be one who saved a whole bunch of people. And then the one right outside of Chicago, I guess it was
Right.
July 4th. Like
Highland Park.
yeah, that's one of the most like restricted
I
states
know.
ever. And
exactly.
Criminals don't care. They're going to get their hands on a weapon and they're going to try use it to hurt
exactly
people.
right. Well, I'll tell you, Jake, I am all for, this is a very controversial subject, but I'm going to throw it out there because I'm not afraid of controversy. I'm all for teachers being armed. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the whole Uvalde thing. That was an absolute senseless tragedy. I support law enforcement. I have a lot of friends who are in law enforcement, but they just can't always be there. They're not going to always be there to help you. It may take them longer than you need, so you need to be prepared to save your own life with deadly force if you have to. I'm all for arming teachers. I'm all for, the constitutional carry. Just be trained. Be highly, highly, highly trained.
I love it. What I know you're a member of at least a couple organizations. What organizations are those, and who would you suggest people get trained through or certified through or things like that?
Right. I love the curriculum with the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. It's very easy to follow. It's easy to understand, but it's so thorough. When I took that training to become an instructor, I learned everything from how ammunition is measured to, just everything you can imagine, like how long it takes a guy with a knife to get to you from 50 feet, if you're holding a firearm and, the laws, everything that you can possibly learn. It's a very thorough. I teach the U.S. Concealed Carry curriculum, and I don't really belong to a training group per se. And I have unfortunately had to kind of back off. I have dropped out as a co-leader of the Armed Women of America because my dad got really sick and he's very elderly. So I couldn't manage everything. Gotcha. So I don't instruct firearms as a full-time job. So, it's just something I do when somebody really wants it or needs it.
I had on Edgar Mills from Osprey Shooting Solutions a couple weeks ago.
Edgar. Yes, I agreed with a lot of what Edgar said.
Nice. Have you ever met him or gone out to his
I have
place?
not. I have not. But if I ever get up that way, I will definitely stop by.
Yeah, I think my wife and I might be going up there in the next few weeks to do some training.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
But yeah, where would you recommend if people are intimidated by picking up a gun, where would you recommend they start?
Honestly, with training.
Okay.
Even when I went and bought my first firearm right after this, incident happened, and then I knew, I want a firearm and I need one, and I feel very unsafe without one. I was still afraid of it. And until you really train with it, you go to the range with it, and you practice malfunctions, loading it, unloading it, cleaning it, taking it apart, putting it back together. I mean, you know how that baby works from A to Z. That's when you really become totally comfortable. And some people may never get to that point, and that's okay. But my suggestion is to start with training.
Okay.
And what I would do as a trainer with someone who's never shot before, who's, not familiar with firearms, when we get to the part about, getting the actual gun and going to the range, our local gun shop here is, they are so fantastic and awesome. And they were very helpful to me during my, what I went through and when I was going and practicing. But Shooters of Columbus here in Columbus, Georgia, those guys are amazing. The owners are amazing. They've been very good to our organization, and they've been very good to me personally. But when you get to that point, they have firearms that you can rent, and you can try them before you buy them. So you can try several different kinds to kind of see what works for you best. But my recommendation is to start with the training, and by the time you go through the training and you kind of know a lot of stuff, and you get to the range and you begin to get a little more comfortable because you do know a little bit, you got a little bit of knowledge under your belt. You know how to anticipate the recoil. You kind of know that you'll be able to do it. Versus just going to the range like I did and just starting from scratch.
Yeah, definitely. What's your pistol of choice?
I love well, I'll tell you what, I have to. I love a Glock. I'm a Glock girl. My first firearm was a Springfield XDS 9mm.
Okay.
Love that. I love it. And the thing I love about it is that it has a backstrap safety. Now, you have to train. You have to practice with it. You really have to practice with it, because if you don't hold it if your grip is not just right, it won't fire. But I like that because I have grandchildren, and, they'll visit me occasionally. And of course, and let me just throw that little thing in there right now. If you have firearms, please teach your children about them. Please don't, yes, lock them up by all means. Get them out of reach of your children. Children are very inquisitive, and they will find things that you never thought they could. But teach them so that if they go to their friend's house and their friend pulls out, a firearm, they know what to do. They know to immediately go tell an adult, or, get out, or whatever they need to do. But teach your children about firearms and how important it is to not touch one. My other favorite is a Glock 17. That is a sweet shooting little firearm.
Yeah.
And let me say this too. And people who are gun owners, they know this, but people that are new, these people that might be deciding to just pick up a firearm and buy a holster and start carrying it. There are two basic kind of ammunitions for handguns. One is called ball or target ammo, and one is called self-defense ammo. Target ammo is a lot less expensive, But the thing you need to know about target ammo is it will go through sheetrock. If you live in an apartment or in a house and you have other people in the room next to you, it's so important that you always consider what's beyond your target. In my particular situation, that happened and it ended up, I think, like way up in a bookcase somewhere. The self-defense ammo will not do that, or not do that. I don't guess it's guaranteed not to, but if you hit your target, it's not going to. It'll
Right.
stay where it's made. I'm not going to get into all the details on that because most people know that, but it's an important thing if you're a new carrier and you don't have any training, but you want to carry. So
Yeah, that knowing what's beyond your target is pretty important.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And can I just touch on one last thing, Jake? I know
Yeah.
our time is just about up.
We got plenty of time.
Well, I always do. I do some community, like a group of different groups get together. Like the Libertarian Party was one group that got together, and I did a little talk for them. And one of the things that I really try to stress, more important than anything, your absolute first line of defense, whether you're carrying a firearm or not, but especially if you're carrying a firearm, you have to be more aware than other people do of what's going on around you. You should also, I see women, walking through the park with their earbuds in, and I'm thinking, anybody could come up behind them and they would never know it. And it happens. People think that human trafficking and sex trafficking and those types of things don't happen. They really do. It's
Especially in
real
Georgia.
thing. Right. It's a real thing. With us having an international airport, right in Atlanta. I mean, it's a real thing. So you've got to be situationally aware. You've got to be aware of what's going on around you. I'm not saying to be paranoid or, freak out everywhere you go, but don't do things that make you an easy target. And by this, I mean, when you're getting into your car at the mall, don't get into your car. If there's an old white van parked next to your car and they're real close and, so it looks like there's a couple of people in it and it's after dark, don't do it. Either go around to the other side or, get somebody to walk you out or something. Don't do it. So just think about things. Don't get into that total mindset where you're always looking for trouble right around the corner, but, notice who's walking behind you. My daughter and I were walking through the parking lot at Walmart one night and it was late. And yes, that's a no, but it happens occasionally. I noticed this guy had parked about 3 rows over from us, and he was in direct line to the door. The aisle he parked on went straight into the door. The aisle we parked on was over to the side. And so as we got out of our vehicle and started walking up, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that this guy walked all the way across 3 rows just to get in behind us. That's a red flag. That's when you go into that and you turn around and you don't want to stare somebody down, but you want to let them know that you see them. I see you. You just make eye contact. I see you. You walk a little bit faster or, don't confront them, but just, keep going, but notice what's happening around you because that will keep you from doing a dumb thing that will get you put in jail if you do have to use deadly force. You don't want to get to that point to where you're in that situation. If you can head it off and get away from it, your very first priority is just to escape, evade the whole situation. Don't go looking for it. Don't go looking for trouble, and don't let trouble sneak up on you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. People do tend to conflate like being situationally aware or just preparing for certain things to happen as paranoia. And it's just not the same thing. Like paranoia, you're kind of driven by your emotions and not like nothing logical. Whereas preparing and being situationally aware, you're just acting logically, and not.
You're absolutely correct. Well, I mean, we all know, the town that you live in, the area that you live in, the area that I live in, it's become very violent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not safe to go out by yourself after dark, at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. It's just not a safe thing to do. Make good choices and make good decisions, but always make sure that you don't make yourself an easy target.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up, have you heard of Strikeman laser firing system?
Is that the practice? Is that
Yeah,
the
the
practice
practice
system?
one. It's got a little bullet, little laser bullet. I don't know
I
if that's gonna
have
come in
heard
focus.
of that. I'm not familiar with it. I'm not gonna lie, but I have seen something about that. Are you
It's really
using that?
interesting. Yeah. I because it allows me to. It's not, you're still dry firing. Like it's
Right,
not. You're not. There's no recoil or anything like that. But
right.
it does allow you to pull that trigger and like know exactly where you're aiming at the target, and like you have a little target set up, your phone set up, and it registers, and you can do different kinds of training and different like. It's pretty neat. Like it's a pretty neat thing to be able to do just in the comfort of your own home when you don't have time to actually get to the range.
That is absolutely amazing. Absolutely awesome stuff. Let me ask you a question. Where's your magazine when you're doing that?
Your magazine is in the gun. It's just empty.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Otherwise it won't keep
It
firing.
won't fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some guns will not fire if you don't have a magazine in, or
Yeah,
in that
mine is one of
particular
those.
system, it may work that way. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the bullet is yeah, it's just a little
Yeah.
cartridge. It's got
Yeah.
rubber gaskets on it, so it stays in the
Right.
chamber.
Just kind of like a snap cap.
Yeah, and they make
Mhm.
them for all different types of guns now, which is pretty cool. Like I think they have an AR one. They've got 9mm. They've got shotgun shells. It's pretty
Way
cool.
cool. I
Yeah.
need to check that out. That is a way cool. That is awesome. I am all about dry firing. Dry
Yeah.
firing is, but man, you got to be safe. I am definitely a safety girl.
Mm-hmm.
Safety is my big thing over anything else.
Yeah.
If you're going to dry fire and you don't have that nice system that you have, put your ammo, put everything in another room. Don't even have it in the same room with you. So many that we live in a very distracted world right now.
Mm.
With all the technology and everything going on, we're all so distracted all the time. And so, just be very, very careful. If you're going to dry fire, I think that's fantastic. It's a great way to train without burning up that ammo.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure that you're safe about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's pretty cool stuff.
Awesome.
There's a few options now. I think Strikeman was one of the first, and now a bunch of companies have come out with them. So
I always
there's
love
options now.
the new toys and gadgets and
Uh-huh.
things. Those are always cool. Absolutely.
Big time. Well, Tammy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it and telling us your story.
Well, thank you for having me, Jake.
Yeah,
It's been a pleasure. And I just want to say, don't live as a victim. Don't give up your power. Don't give up your power. You don't have to live in fear.
Well, we'll end it right there. Thank you very much, Tammy.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all next week on the Free Georgia podcast.